Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm going to go straight into the conversation because we've got a lot to talk about. So, I'm going to ask them some questions about their experience in dance. And so we're going to start off with Denzel. What inspired you to become a dancer?
As I frequently say, I got into dance by pure chance. I was 17 and not doing much, left school, not knowing what to do. And lots of my friends were dancing in clubs and bars and all that sort of stuff. Not bars, but clubs, nightclubs and stuff. And one of my best friends, he was always going to nightclubs, sneaking out of school, going to, Crackers, Billy's, clubs in the West End. And he said, let's go to Pineapple and do some dancing, do some proper dancing. And I was like, I wasn't really interested in dancing as such. I don't mind a bit of boogieing, but not really dancing. So we sort of forgot about it. And then a neighbour of mine, a guy who lived near me, used to dress really flashy, big boots, big coat. He was very flash. And we were like, who is this guy? What does he do? And he said, this guy's a ballet dancer. And we were like, what's that? We didn't know what a ballet dancer was. And eventually it turned around that he was teaching a class near us. And so about 6 of us went to do this class. 6, 7 of us went to do this class. We all stormed into this jazz class in the early 80s. The early time of, you remember Fame, the movie, the original Fame movie, and that sort of stuff, early 80s. And I just loved what he was doing. I just really loved it. And I'd never seen anything like it, never tried it. And luckily, I picked up most things quite easily. And all my friends said, well, load of rubbish, this is nonsense, they all left. And I used to go back every week. And that's how I started to get into dance. That was how my love of dancing first started, but it was all jazz. And then he started to teach me bits of ballet. And I was like, what's this stuff? And I quite enjoyed the beginnings of that, learning these round shapes, these lovely long lines. I was like, this is all right. And then he said to me, there's a local ballet school. And I went to a local ballet school. They took any boy that walked in the door because the boys are very scarce, And I went to this little ballet school when I was 18, just turned 18. And I did 3 years in this very small school. And I loved every moment. And I just loved ballet. That ballet was my first real sort of love in that respect. Do you know what I mean? And I just loved the whole look and the feel and the way it made me feel and the way to move. And that was my introduction to dancing.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. And Pam, tell me about your experience. What inspired you to become a dancer?
Well, I'm going to start exactly the same way. Actually, it was by accident. It was serendipity, actually. So, I mean, I'll take you back to actually when I really first started dancing and performing. And actually, that was in the community. I was less than 10 years old. And, being first generation British, we didn't have grandparents here. And so there was a lady, Mrs. Armstrong, who our parents used to call her mother. And so we called her grandma. So that was the closest thing that we had to a grandparent. And she used to teach us songs, traditional songs from Jamaica, folk songs. And then when we were getting the songs, she'd start, putting dances to it. And so just really, really simple dances. And then we joined a new group called the Chapeltown Dance Group up in the old Reginald Community Centre. I'm looking out in the crowd because I know some people will have known when it was there. It's not there anymore. But yeah, we used to perform, Jamaican folk songs and dances and perform them in the local community for the Jamaica Society. And the big performance was when Cindy Breakspear came to the UK. She was the first Jamaican Miss World. And she came to Leeds, and so we did a performance for her, and we performed for the Queen. And actually, I realised I liked performing. But at the time, I was actually doing, folk songs, folk dances, and with my friends. So there was nothing really, nothing stressful. It was all fun. And then I went to middle school from the age of 10 years old, and dance was on the curriculum. So I went to Harehill Middle School alongside, and I am going to call your names, Dawn, then Donaldson, now Holgate, Sharon, now Watson, then Donaldson. They were my peers at the time, Martin, Hilton. We all went to Harehill Middle School, and actually it was normal. We did maths, we did English, and we did dance. 35 minutes of creative dance. And if you were then lucky and deemed talented enough, then you were invited to join the dance group in the 4th year. It was a 4-year middle school. And actually, the accident of finding my way into dance it was just like a stepping stone. There was always something there to move on to and opportunities to move on to in this small community in Leeds. There was always somewhere to evolve and really just develop this practice. I decided, I'll take a leap, but I decided to go into dance training in around 1985 when the Northern School was being founded. The Northern School of Contemporary Dance was being founded in Leeds because that was local. So I decided that I would do that. It just felt like a natural step. But to be honest, I didn't actually decide to become a dancer until probably after my second year. Kind of thought, oh, actually, do you know what? I'll stay with this. And I did. And I did for many years. So I went on to dance with GB8 Physical Theatre. Once I'd graduated, I then joined Phoenix Dance Company with Sharon and Dawn and Celine, Derek, as the first female dancers, as Jennifer said in the intro. I've just lived a blessed life in terms of the journey into dance, that the opportunities were there and the opportunities were local, and that matters. I'm just thinking about you teaching earlier today, but local opportunity really does matter, and I will come back to it. But because my very beginnings, starting in the community, learning dances, learning folk songs that really connect to my heritage, I think is more important now than it was then. So I really think there's something about bringing yourself and what you bring to dance training, because I think the less developed we are in terms of our heritage and our understanding and our background, the more I think you can be taken over by a technique that could be foreign to you, to your body, to your understanding. So there's something about just who you are when you go into training, whether it be a club dancer, a jazz, or whether it be a loving folk song.
And where did we meet?
National Youth Dance Company. We met decades ago at the first ever National Youth Dance Company, and wasn't that a blast?
It was amazing.
It was a blast. Amazing. What we got up to.
Yeah.
The dance was great too.
And there were lots of dancers from Hay Hills at the time. There were lots of you guys there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a big from Leeds. Took over. They tried to take over.
No, it was extraordinary.
So tell me, I know you talked about training. Can you tell us about the classes that you were in?
When I was training, as I said, boys were quite scarce on the ground, So again, as Pam said, we were all first generation, so none of us had that background in dance or theatre. My school never went on any theatre trips, or dance trips and that sort of stuff. We knew nothing about dancing other than watching, Singing in the Rain with your mum, or something on TV, And so when I started doing classes, everything was completely new. Luckily, I started with two other guys, and they were completely lost as well. So as always, when you get to a class, the girls always know what they're doing, and the boys are always completely lost at the back, But they treated us. I got treated so well. The school I went to was a very small school. It had just broken up from another school, so it was a very small. I was like the third year or something, and there was like 10 people in my year, 18 people in the second year, and about 4 people in the third year. So it was a really tiny school, But the thing about it, we had really, really good training, and it was really ballet focused. A lot of schools now are very musical theatre, a lot of jazz and contemporary, but my school was a very balletic school. So we just focused on ballet, and pas de deux and that sort of stuff, But the training was really great, and I had a great time. We were a very mixed school. I was with a Singaporean guy. I was with a guy from Mauritius. So our school was very mixed in those days. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. How was training your classes? What were your classes like?
They were fine, actually.
Yeah.
I said it was the very first year of the Northern School of Contemporary Dance, and there were 13 students at the time, and I think about 5 or 6 of them had come from the same community that I'd come from. So there was something, I was really comfortable with that. We were taught by Namron, the great Namron from London Contemporary Dance Theatre, who was familiar to Hare Hills because he would come to Hare Hills and deliver some classes there. So we knew who he was, and Gurmit Hookham was also one of the pupils. So it was familiar, I think, for the most part, and I think probably a little bit too familiar in some ways, because it's really in further and particularly higher education, or when people go away to university, that's where you really find yourself. You really discover who you are and all of that. But I was still living at home, and training just down the road, and so there's something about the value of being local and having immediate access to it. But then there's also something about needing that space to grow, and so I did an additional year at London Contemporary Dance School. And actually that was really part of the dream about, I always aspired to become a dancer with London Contemporary Dance Theatre. Right? As you do. Yes, yeah. It was, and actually there weren't many contemporary companies for us to aspire to join, really. So London Contemporary Dance Theatre was it. Darshan Singh Buller, an Asian man, had come from Hare Hills and was a dancer with the company. Namron, a black man, was with the company. So even going to see them perform, there were people that looked like us, and and dancing a technique that debatable, but has roots in a lot of the African forms of expression and technique and styles. So it was familiar, and so aspired to join London Contemporary Dance Theatre. So I trained there. That was an awakening. I respected the teachers, I still do. But yeah, it was very strict. It was very ordered.
Out of your comfort zone, away from home.
Yes, it was. It was. What Jane Dudley says you do. It was a regime, but one that you gave yourself to, and you wanted to be part of. But yeah, no challenge to really who I was. It was you kind of really fall into step and you try your best. It was hard work. Hard work. Yeah. I never made it into the company.
Okay. Can you tell me about the highlights of your career?
The highlights of my career?
Yeah.
Oh my God. My highlight of my career was, again, I just did basically 3 years training at school. And I was dragged kicking and screaming to my first job in a cabaret show because I wanted to do ballet. And there was no work at the moment. So my jazz teacher, very weirdly enough, was choreographing a show in Norway. And he goes, I need 4 black guys to be in this cabaret show. And in Norway, they specifically wanted 4 black guys to be in the show. And we had 3. And I said, well, I don't want to do jazz. I'm going to wait and try and get into London City Ballet. They've got a contract coming up. They've always got a contract coming up, which never came. Yeah. And so they said, well, while you're waiting, come to Norway. And I said, I'm not going to Norway for 6 months, In the end, they dragged me kicking and screaming to Norway. That was one of the best times of my life in Norway, doing a cabaret show. It was jazz, it was ballet, it was tap, it was speaking Norwegian. It was brilliant. And that was the good thing about dancing. Dancing gets you to travel around the world, and all your friends are from different parts of the world. It's great for free holidays, that sort of stuff. And then I came back, and they were looking for guys to do a Swan Lake at Festival Ballet, the English National Ballet, was a festival, London Festival Ballet. And everybody was auditioning. Some people got jobs, some people didn't. I said, I'm not going to try because they don't take any British dancers, really. They won't take any black dancers, really. And then a friend of mine, Noel Wallace, got in. And then suddenly another friend of mine, a Chinese guy, got in. So I thought, you know what? Let me give it a bash, And then I went along there, and luckily I did well, and they took me into the company as well. And we had a great time. We did so many amazing tours. But getting to the company was amazing because you've been watching these guys performing for like the last 2, 3, 4 years. So you knew all of them on stage. And then you see London Contemporary Company, you know them all. Yeah. And then suddenly you're in the building and they walk past you and you're like, oh, that was so-and-so. So to suddenly be in class with these people every day was like really mind-blowing, Yeah. And some of these guys were like big stars, But some of the tour went to New York. We did the Met in New York for 2 weeks, which was unbelievably great. Going to Egypt, everyone getting sick in Egypt, that sort of stuff, going to Australia, So the good thing about dance is that we did some really great ballets, but you really got to tour the world and see the world. It was brilliant. Yeah, they were the highlights of my career. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what?
does.
Pretty much the same. Yeah, it was. Phoenix has got to be Phoenix Dance Theatre has got to be the highlight of I think my career. It was the international travel was amazing. Representing the UK at the Olympics in Atlanta, that was amazing. That was gosh, the stories you can tell. So touring the world, seeing parts of the world that just takes me back to being in Mr. Dacre's humanities class, where he always had this big map of the world behind him, never knowing that actually dance would actually take me to those corners and to those places. It was absolutely incredible. But also just being in the studio and not creating work, but also dancing in works, kind of with the community that was the Phoenix dancers. I think they were. That has just got to be the highlight of my career. It's the place where you grow, where you feel at home, where you really evolve, where you fight. But it honestly felt like a family, and it was just phenomenal. Just phenomenal. So when I'm asked often, "Oh, do you miss performing?" In all honesty, no. No, not one bit. But I do miss being in the studio.
And how about the low times?
The low point. Well, I mean, luckily there weren't that many low points. The low points is usually, injuries. We always say to young students, we have an injury. Be careful. You can work with it, but the more we want, you don't want to stop dancing. When you're a dancer, you want to be on. You don't want to sit around watching your friends performing. So and I've been just out of the blue. Suddenly you pop your calf, and suddenly you're off for 2 months. That sort of stuff. And it's very disheartening when you're watching all your friends dancing or missing tours because you're injured. That stuff. It's all part of the business. If you were any part of the athlete's business, football or whatever sports you do. But normally, on the whole, it's been quite good. I've had points where I didn't get on with my boss. We've all had that. You don't get on with the boss. We can all relate to that, can't we? And there was some very sort of not dark times, but it just made work difficult sometimes when you don't get on the boss. I don't like the boss. He doesn't like you. And it doesn't take away from the dancing. The thing is that you're doing what you love. That's the thing. We're earning money doing what we love. But there wasn't that. I can't say there were any low points as such. That's just injuries, that sort of thing. Yeah. I must say I was very lucky. I think very lucky.
Yeah. And do you know what? You're gonna have to switch this up. I'm gonna say pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Highlight, kind of being in the studio. Low light, being in the studio. It was, it's the place where everything happens.
Yeah.
It's you lay yourself out, for a choreographer, who's creating a piece of work, and so sometimes the best can happen, sometimes the worst can happen. But yeah, it can be a challenging space, but a phenomenal space, and I wouldn't change that for the world. I don't know if it's that I don't focus on the low lights. After this, I'm going to take Sharon and Dawn for some tea and say, what were the low lights? Because I genuinely can't remember them. Even when in the south of France at the age of 30. Where I was feeling absolutely fantastic and I did a leap on stage and landed and snapped my Achilles tendon. Ooh. Even that wasn't a low light. Especially the weird bit where all the guys were then hanging out the window with G shouting out the window, "Where are you going?" in a fire engine. I didn't even realise they took me to the hospital in the back of a fire engine. So I mean, weird lights, lots of strange things kind of happened, but no, I don't really remember the low lights. I'm sure there were some that were probably devastating at the time, but when you reflect really on a career and on a journey, I don't really remember them.
Okay.
We have selective memories.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thinking about performances, what was the most memorable performance or was it a solo? Was it being in choreography?
Okay, we're going to switch it up. All right. So performance-wise was it was the early days of Phoenix, and we toured to Jamaica for the first of 2 times. And actually that was also, so being of Jamaican heritage, that was the first time I actually went to Jamaica. And I've got 2 brothers there. And knowing that my 2 brothers were in the audience alongside, was it the Prime Minister or the Prime Minister was there and my 2 brothers, but the highlight was that my 2 brothers were in the audience and I was going to meet them for the first time kind of after the show. That was, I think that combination of performing, but actually just it meaning something kind of, something different, because I was actually performing in my motherland and for my people, for my heritage, and that was mind blowing. There you go.
Mine was meeting Pam's 2 brothers. One of the highlights of my career was when we went to New York. Because I've been to New York when I was a little kid. We were in New Jersey, but didn't go to New York. But going to New York as a company was unbelievable,
wow.
And being in the Met. Who's been to the
Wow.
Met? The Met is an enormous place, and the crowds were off their seats. We were doing Romeo and Juliet or some, I didn't even know what we were doing. And but the end of the show came, and the curtain came down. We thought it was really quiet. And then suddenly the curtain opened, and the place just erupted. Almost blew my hair back. And it was, and that was one of the unbelievable highlights of my life. I was like, "What is this?" It's like 3,000 people screaming. It was unbelievable, and that was a real sort of memorable time of my life. Yeah. I did always say, I'd love to go to Jamaica and work. And then a friend of mine did offer me to come to Jamaica, and I went to Kingston to teach for 2 weeks.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh,
with
where
Tony
did you
Wilson.
teach?
Tony Wilson Company. Do you know Tony Wilson?
No.
He's a contemporary company. It's a national dance company,
Yeah.
and there's Tony Wilson Company. They're like the 2 sort of companies.
Oh,
and that's the Tony Wilson
amazing.
Company. Yeah, it was brilliant. And 2 weeks in Jamaica. But yes, we discuss afterwards with Dawn and Sharon. But that was a real memorable moment in my career. I'm sure there've been a few more, but mainly just traveling. For the shows we did a great boys ballet. We did 7 boys ballet, and it's one of those things where the whole company auditions. Yeah. You think, we go along to this. They print all the principals, and this woman was sort of looking at the back and looking at everybody. You thought, oh, we might have a chance here, And then we did this great ballet, and she goes, oh, I want 1, bam, 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 and then she chose me as well. Like out of 40 boys or 35 boys, she only wanted to work with 8 boys, and I was one of them. And I thought, oh, this is good.
Wow.
And then we started working on the piece, and it turned out that I had the longest solo. And I thought, oh, that's not bad. And then I was on the poster. And I've got that poster in my house. Oh. And do you know where I found that poster? In the dump. Outside the back of the theatre. There were so many posters they had to get rid of. Mm-hmm. And I was sick at home, and a friend of mine called me and said, hey, I've seen your poster. I said, where is it? It's in the dustbin out the back. And I was sick in bed. And I said, you know what? I called a cab.
Oh, wow.
Went to the studio, put my picture in the gear, and I put my picture home, and went straight back to bed again.
Oh, that's amazing.
I've still got that picture in my room now. Oh, big poster. Those big theatre posters. Yeah.
Okay, we're just gonna move on to because talked about the dance industry. Yeah. What do you believe are the main barriers in dance now for a career for a black professionals?
Missy?
Who wants to go first?
I think a lot of the barriers are
slowly disappearing. Slowly.
Yeah, some of them are still there though. Certainly when I was training and going into training, one of the barriers was around body shape and size, and a belief that certain techniques belong to certain bodies and certain aesthetics. So that was a barrier, whether it was openly expressed or hidden. That was something that was always there. There were the model of dance and the dance business was really different back then. It was, you went into training to join a company, And actually there wasn't a lot to prepare you for, well, if you don't make it into that company, where do you go and what do you do? So if you can imagine, you know, a company's got 20 dancers, and every year you've got, at least in one school, you know, like 50 kind of young people training to kind of go into that company or into a company. So a lot of talent, I think, falls by the wayside. Had fallen by the wayside. What's different now, I think, is the industry's changed, and I think freelancing is a lot more commonplace. What was really exciting, I saw something really exciting, and that's when Rambert launched its Rambert 2 company, and you know, were appointing these you know, fixed term young dancers, and I thought, gosh, are they really going to get the talent that they need? Are people really no longer kind of aspiring to be in the companies? Are they going to go for a fixed term job? And the talent that applied for that company and eventually made it into that company, it still, actually thinking back, it just blows my mind, which is actually really exciting, because it means that the sector and the industry is a lot more dynamic now, that it's not just about you know, joining a company or a set body of dancers, but that things shift and change kind of all of the time. I don't know, though, that the dance industry has grown to create kind of more opportunities for this talent that is now going out for freelance kind of opportunities. I'm looking to Andrew Hurst, that might would know better than me. But I think the other key shifts, especially in terms of contemporary dance, and I don't know if it's the same in ballet, is that crossover between kind of contemporary training and West End and musical theatre and other kind of genres. It's a lot more fluid now, which is absolutely fantastic, which tells me that training has to have changed to make people and bodies more adaptable to a career kind of in the arts. So I think the industry has changed. Some of the barriers that used to exist when I was going in, some of them, let's not kid ourselves, some of those barriers are still there. People still look for certain body types and shapes and a certain look on stage. You know, it's happening all over the world, and that's still a battle, I think, to fight. But I think schools now have greater social responsibility to prepare those young dancers for a career, whether that career is with a company or freelancing, or as a manager, or as something else. I think it's a more responsible training sector, certainly in contemporary dance.
Yeah, I agree. In the ballet world, it's a lot more specific, isn't it? As we know, a lot of it does go on physique. These days, it's like modelling. They want to be a model to be, you know, small, tall, and thin. But again, that's changed so much. And I think they're trying to, since Black Lives Matter and all that, and that period, I think times have changed. It's always been a lot easier for black guys. Guys have always, like, you know, Melinda would tell you, you know, it's always easier. You find a lot more black guys getting into companies. You know, it's the black women that struggle to get into companies, and I think that's another reason why a lot of black women don't pursue the classical world, because they know they might have the feet and the legs and the body, and you know, they've been saying for the last, you know, 30 years, and I'm not going to have one black girl in my corps de ballet. You know, she has to be a soloist or a principal, or we're not interested. You know, and again, the last sort of 4 or 5 years, that started to change, and people are taking a chance on that 1 or 2 black girls, the company, you know. There is a big shift into training these, you know, Rambert 2, JVT 2, JV2, and them sort of. So everyone's trying to find a way to accommodate all these young talented kids are coming through, and they're getting better and better and better. You know, like most things, and so they're trying to create more smaller spaces for them to get a chance to get on stage and stuff. But in the ballet world, the barriers have sort of slowly breaking down, but it is a slow process. We do find a lot more black talent coming through. You got, at the Royal Ballet, they've got quite a few young black dancers coming through at the Royal Ballet. You got Martina Samba, you got Jo Sissons, you got Francesca Hayward, you've got Mariana, the young girl, Ukraine girl. There's a black Ukraine girl in the company. She's beautiful. So a lot more girls coming through that way. EMB have taken on a lot more dark-skinned dancers. Black dancers, Asian. We never have the conversation about Indian dancers. You got lovely Sarah Kundi. There was another beautiful Indian girl before, and she stopped dancing quite quickly, but she had a beautiful technique, And again, it's just as you say, if you don't see it, you can't really sort of be it. And so, and again, that's slowly changing. I think very slowly changing, but I think we are making steps in the right direction. I think slowly.
I know.
Very slowly.
It's because you're running out of nutcrackers.
Yeah.
It's like, gosh, nutcrackers got to change, man.
Everything is offensive now. The Arabian dance is offensive. The Chinese dance is offensive. So you have to. They're trying to struggle to find, what is sort of non-offensive ballets these days. A lot of these ballets now, they can't perform anymore. Petrushka, with the Moor, you can't do the Moor anymore. That's all gone now. There has been quite a big shift in the dance world. But the ballet world, I think, it's very, very slightly changing. I think people are more open-minded, but I think, as we say, we need the training for the young kids. To more and more young kids coming through, 14, 15-year-olds, even younger. As I said, Casa Pancho started Ballet Black. In 2001, we started Ballet Black. And she's had hundreds of young kids come through there in 20 years. How many of them actually pursued through into dance? Just a mere handful. A mere handful passed through.
She also acknowledged a big difference between then and now as well, is that, I got a grant to do my dance training. I was supported to do my dance training.
Me too. I did.
Now kids have to find the money to, parents have to find the money to get their kids into school. And not just to get their kids into school, especially in the ballet world where they start younger, their maintenance cost and their accommodation, it's so expensive. I worked with a young mother who worked for the NHS, who has a very, very and exceptionally talented young daughter, Constance, who I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning her name. It's out there. We did a big fundraising campaign, and she's autistic, but she could not find help anywhere to get her child into training, even though she'd found a place. And this was 2020. When was this? When did she start? 2020. It was this year. No, 2021 that she started. And they did she did what they call that thing, that knitting on the platform where you raise money. Crowdfunding. So she launched a crowdfunding appeal, and it was kind of really slow moving, and I was supporting her and trying to get her to speak to different people to kind of launch the campaign. And it finally got traction when The Guardian picked the story up. And The Guardian run a little snippet of it, and then from The Guardian it then trickled down into local papers, and suddenly, in the space of 24 hours, she had all of the money to send her child to school, and she's doing phenomenally well. And this is a child that really struggles with formal education, and so dance is really important in terms of a means of expression. She's a mixed race child, so she's wants to express her. She tells me she wants to express her identity and who she is, and she does that better really through dance. So that funding is actually enabling her to grow as a person, but also to access the training, for which there are still barriers, around affordability.
What's one piece of advice that you'd give to a young, aspiring Black British dancer?
I mean, as with anything artistic, I think you just have to, if you really love it, you should go for it no matter what barriers in the way. You can't let people stop you doing it. You can't let people put you off doing it. You can't let people dishearten you in doing it. It's what you love. It's in your heart. There may be barriers, like with any profession, there's going to be barriers in the way at some point. Whether it's the people, it's the finances, it's something or other. But if it's in your heart, you're going to pursue it, and you're going to do the best you can, I think. I mean, You know, that's the best I can sort of say, really. You know, just do what's in your heart and push for what you want to do. You know what I mean? If you want to do something, you're just going to go for it. Nobody can stop you. Nobody can stop you, really. You know.
Yeah, I think for me, and going back to what I was saying about the industry changing, that it's less about finding those dancers that either look the same and kind of can be in a company and the like. It's you enter it to become an artist. You need to come out as an individual, as a trained individual that I hope has got flexibility to go to into whatever company you want, or even to form your own company. And there's something I would advise that you take every opportunity to learn about yourself before you go into training. There was something about when I went into training, and people of my generation, I can't believe I'm saying that, people of my generation, kind of the education system did not teach us about who we were. History did not talk about my history. I was one person at home and in my community, and then you go to school and you're taught to learn and to absorb all of that. It's slow coming, but it's changing, and there's real opportunity for you to kind of really just learn what you want to learn. There's so much information out there, and I would say, seek it out, try different things about your identity, learn about your family, about think about just take it all in. It's on the internet and it's there, because actually that really feeds, I think, the person. You've heard the saying, bring your whole self to work, but you kind of have to know who your whole self is. There's something about being confident going into training, knowing that you're going into it and going, okay, right, I'm also on a journey of discovering myself and who I am, because it's all of that. It's all of your background, and I'm looking at the young people in the crowd here, but it's all of that. It's all of your background. It's your family. It's your life that I think really that will create the artist, and it's more about who you are that becomes the artist than the training and what they physically teach you to do really through the training. That is important. That becomes a vehicle and a tool. But who you are and who you become, that's the artist. The artist is in there. So so if you kind of really track that back, the artist is already in you. Just discover it and draw and learn and allow it to kind of really flourish.
Okay.
That was a lot of words. I must learn to be more succinct.
You.
Sorry.
Okay. What are the common issues in both genres, and how do you feel these could be addressed?
Well, common issues.
Yeah.
Oof. I mean, there's always. I mean, we're talking about dance and stuff. I mean, there's going to be a commonality in the way we want to pursue our career, what we want to do. And as Pam says, we do what's in our heart. And that will go for ballet and contemporary. You want, ideally, as you say, we want to perform. We're in this business to perform a lot of the time, aren't we? I mean, there are more and more people nowadays who actually get into the business because they want to teach and they want to work with their community, or they want to choreograph, as you say. But as you said, we are the artists within us, and we want to get out there and we want to perform and work with as many different people as possible. The common issues. Just the joy of dancing, I suppose. Just I'm not sure really. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
So I think the access cost is one. I think the geographical provision, I think, still is a bit of an issue. It's great. It's amazing that we have the Northern School of Contemporary Dance, and we have the Gateway project up in Gateshead. So it's growing, it's flourishing, and those training and opportunities for young people, I think, are developing really around the country, and that's really important. But it's not equal. I think we're still talking, and we're talking here really about ballet and contemporary, and that's fine. There are also dancers that want to train, South Asian dancers, and the training around that isn't as equally accessible. Really around where does one train to become a South Asian dancer if not in the tradition within the tradition of having your one teacher. So there's something about provision, and we could increase provision and diverse provision, and especially the more diverse provision there is around training means that South Asian influences jazz dance, influences ballet, influences something else. I think the more we have, the richer and more diverse it is, the more potential there is, I think, for the traditional forms that we know to evolve.
Right. Yeah. Anything else you want to add? Because I'm going to open out to Q&A. Yeah, do you want to add anything else?